bro?
I'm good.
All right.
All right, so let's get it started.
Yes.
You know, we got thank you for everyone who's joined in. We got a special guest in the building today. He's a Philly native, entrepreneur, board advisor and leader. Sits on a number of boards, from Mastery Charter School to the Kimmel Center to Lendistry, which Lendistry, if you don't know, is actually the organization who's given out a lot of the COVID-19 relief grants. And so, so we're excited to really talk to him today about a plethora of things. But he's the founder and CEO of DiverseForce, which is a human capital solutions firm that recruits, retains, and develops high skilled, diverse talent. And so, Saku and I have come across Sulaiman a lot in the last couple of years. So, we're excited to talk to him, and even just from conversations Sulaiman and I have had, the advice he's given has really helped with me navigating my life. So, we're excited to have you on the show. Welcome, Sulaiman Rahman.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you guys for having me. Good to be here.
Yes, Sulaiman. So, we actually neighbors, and we're very lucky to have living next to someone. But today is like we wanted to take this opportunity to learn so much about you, and also what you do. But before we jump into exactly like the work that you do, we want to start off. It just sounds like, unfortunately, COVID is still hanging around and it's not going anywhere. Hopefully, but tell us a little bit about how you've been sort of managing and getting to this challenging time in regards to COVID. Yeah.
Well, it's been obviously for so many people, obviously health-wise, you have people who were losing folks. 2020 has been a devastating year for a lot of people. On the flip side, as an entrepreneur, it's, from a business perspective, it's been actually a good year for us. And I think that it's important to recognize as an entrepreneur, you have the opportunity to pivot, and I think the people who are pivoting into spaces where the opportunities are, and that's the flexibility of an entrepreneur, is to pivot in a way that you can be in the currency, in the stream of opportunities. And anytime there's any kind of major transformation or change, and obviously some people are better positioned than others based on what they've done prior to COVID. If you're pivoting into something that's in proximity to what what you need to pivot into, you're going to have much more success. But I just believe that as an entrepreneur, it's a great time to identify where are new opportunities, where the world is going next. Some of us have been in a race that we don't have an opportunity to get into because people are so far, they've been around the track so many times. And that's the beautiful thing about kind of this fourth industrial revolution, where technology, things are constantly changing. So it constantly creates new opportunities for new people to get into spaces because everyone's starting at zero, if that makes sense. And COVID has pushed us into market adoption, into things that our whole psychology of how we do things. It's forced us, it's regulated what we can do, what we can't do. So as an entrepreneur, you can be a first mover on new things where others don't have, sometimes their ship is so big they can't turn it fast enough to make it happen. So that's why you're seeing so many new entrepreneurs, so many new millionaires that are being created in a time where there was times in the industrial age where you had to have a lot of capital. You had to, to buy railroads, to buy, somebody buy factories. Now you can be creative and really pivot quickly to be on the front end of things. So I believe, you think about restaurants and some of the restaurants that are starving, but then the others who've pivoted quickly into delivery, position themselves in that way. You have these ghost kitchens now where, now this market adoption of ordering food, you can actually set up you don't even need a facility. You don't need to be downtown where it's high traffic. You can just have a location where you can cook your food, set yourself up on Uber Eats, set yourself on Grubhub, and have a virtual restaurant, if you will. So there's so many new opportunities. And many times people have their head down and kind of, woe is me, but if you keep your head up and look for what's new and pivot into it, you can really set yourself up for great opportunities.
And if I could just ask a follow-up question, as you know, Sulaiman, our base and followers are predominantly the diaspora, black and brown folks. So given that you're talking about how COVID has actually created this new opportunity, do you think in that light that you have sort of like put it, how has COVID sort of like been a positive impact for our black entrepreneur or business folks?
Yeah.
And in what sector of the business has this have a positive impact?
Well, I'll say, it's a mix between COVID and kind of the result of what, George Floyd and this kind of great awakening that's happening, if you will, where people are recognizing, because we have cell phones now, to see the things that, black folks have been faced with. We're having a direct conversation about racial equity. And companies, corporations, I can't tell you how many calls I get from CEOs, and I serve now on the board for the Greater Philadelphia, the Chamber of Commerce of Greater Philadelphia, and sitting around the table with a lot of organizations that want to find black-owned businesses to support. There's billions of dollars that have been put into the market around equity to invest in businesses. So it's not, it's couldn't be a better time to start a business when the attention is around how can we do more business with black businesses, because they understand, during COVID, 40% of our businesses were lost. But again, a lot of them need to pivot into the future. And so there's an opportunity to really pivot, to have more opportunities as well. But the key thing is just position yourself for those opportunities.
Something I'm just noticing is this idea, and you touched upon it, you said, basically alluding to like a lot of what's current right now, especially like, if you're in a position where maybe you haven't had the rug necessarily pull from under you, you can't keep your head down, you have to kind of keep your head up and decide, how to move. And so like, it sounds like the two parts of what we're seeing going on. There's what you touched upon, which is there's a lot that you can do to, whether it's like you're pivoting a business or you're maybe starting a business, and there's a lot that you can do and a lot of opportunities you can do that doesn't require as much overhead. So like the ghost kitchen, example. But then because of what's going on right now and the spotlight that's being put on this issue with racial inequity, there are also a lot of opportunities now where people are, maybe giving funding or looking for black-owned businesses that, that can, increase the number of black entrepreneurs and companies that can be successful. So I think it's just important to, touch on that, because it is a time to move and to execute and to focus on the other side of what's going on, because whenever there are problems there are also like opportunities as well.
Absolutely. And you talk about capital, as you mentioned, I'm on the board for Lendistry, which is a fintech CDFI, and one of the things that I was spending time trying to get people to understand is the PPP dollars, payroll protection program, that many people thought you had to have a payroll. They thought you need to have employees. They thought that you need to be a big company. But that program was for people, anyone who is a 1099. So you're not a W-2 employee. W-2 employees would get, kind of the workers' composite, the programs that were stimulating those who are W-2 employees. But anyone who's a 1099, that's Uber drivers. That's, any kind of entrepreneur. Those are contractors that, that they pay their own taxes and do 1099. That's an opportunity for you to get capital, free capital, low interest capital, to now pivot, and those dollars, billions of dollars. So you think about the Great New Deal that happened back in the early 1900s after the Depression, and that New Deal actually stimulated the middle class in America, but it was no deal for Black Americans, because they were working around them. They were doing FHA programs and redlining and getting capital to. So you got to look at this. You know, this is again a time where the government's printing a bunch of dollars and they're going to pay for it later as far as inflation and things of that sort. But trillions of dollars to stimulate the economy, a recognition that there's been racial inequity and that there's communities that are disproportionately affected by this. So keeping your eyes open to recognizing, you know, the state, $225 million of grant money for businesses, PPP, and some people they get nervous about taking money. Like, take the money and use that to pivot. You know, so there'll be likely more rounds of stimulus opportunities, but make sure you have your paperwork. Make sure you have, you know, you're above board. Do the right things with it. But this is an opportunity for low cost capital that we've been asking for, or grant money to now position for the future, and recognize that also things that we may have been doing, you got to be strategic, because there's a thing called sunk costs. Sunk costs is you may have put money into something. Because you put money into it, you put time into it, you feel like you got to keep it alive because of what you put into it before. But you got to look at it right now and say, is it worth it to continue putting money into something that's not moving forward? So you can't factor in what you lost, what you put into it, because you can't recoup that. You got to look at where you are today and what's the best investment for you moving forward. A lot of times we're basing our investment based on what we put time into and put money into versus what's going to put us in the best position moving forward. And that's transferable to relationships and all kinds of things, but sunk costs. You got to recognize the cost of sunk costs and where you're going and where the best time and effort, you know, and obviously take into consideration your brand, the things that you've built up to the point where people know you for certain things and how it's going to benefit you in the future. But otherwise, you got to understand what's next. Now we're in a new world.
So now, how does one make that mental shift? So let's say, you know, you're someone who has started a business or has been working on a business for years, or you say, you know, it applies to different aspects of life. But I think maybe a fear that a lot of people have is this idea of starting over, or you know, starting something new because you've already put, like I said, like all this time, all this money into what you're doing. How does one get to the point where they're able to make that mental shift and say, you know what, this isn't working, and I'm probably wasting time at this point. Continuing to do this. I need to pivot, or I need to move another direction.
It kind of remind me of these mom and pop shop. You know, sometimes they have a tendency of like maintaining this traditional structure of doing business. So just to go back to Akid's question, like how can you get these businesses who been making money in a traditional way to not like shift their mindset? But because shifting mindset also means shifting the structure of the business as well.
I mean, I think, you know, one of the things about being an entrepreneur is that what you do is not who you are. You know, what you do is, and so many people have their whole identity tied into what they do. I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm a this. That's not who you are, you know. So I've been an entrepreneur, you know, growing up. You know, I went to school for engineering. You know, I went to the University of Penn, you know, for engineering, an Ivy League school for engineering. And if I was,
shout out to Penn, you know,
all the Penn love here,
You got Toby here too, Toby. Don't be upset, we love you.
The diversity in the
And as you know, Penn's not a cheap school, right? So if I was stuck on being an engineer and saying, man, I went to school for it, you know, I wouldn't be where I am today, you know. But I've had to recognize that everything's a building block for something else. But I was not an engineer. That's what I did. That's what I pursued. But I was able to be flexible throughout. And I recognize I'm always building on my skill set. And you should always be working on yourself. Sometimes we work so much in our business versus on our business. We may not build the transferable skills for other things. Working on the greatest asset you have is yourself. So if you build yourself up, what you do is irrelevant, because how you do anything is how you do everything. So when you know, everywhere you go, there you are, type of deal. So when you understand those things that you can build yourself up, to be able to decide where you want to put your energy and know that anywhere you go, you're going to win. And I kind of, I actually, so went to school for engineering, started doing real estate. Actually, while I was in school, I started buying Carlton sheets, no money down real estate videos back then, VHS tapes. And started watching them because I was up, 2 o'clock in the morning watching infomercials at 18 years old. And while other people were saying it's too good to be true, which is a herd mentality, and most people, they're going to work for others and not really be entrepreneurs. I realized that people are 3%ers or 1%ers for a reason. They don't follow the crowd, So I've always been the one to say, if everyone else is saying this is crazy, let me take a look at it. While it's too good to be true, it's too good to miss type of deal. And I watched those audio videos, and it was true. Like, you could actually buy real estate, no money down. There were some strategies to it. So I followed those. Actually, I volunteered for a housing counseling agency to learn real estate. And I volunteered, and they hired me to learn it. I was teaching people, first-time home buyers, how to buy real estate. So I understood the underwriting and what you needed and all those things. And that led me to be able to, find, actually, I didn't have, I buy my first properties and 3 and 4 unit apartment buildings, using refund checks from college to make that happen in the University City area of Philly. Got my license back then.
And so, not to cut you off, what time period was this to get, to get some context in terms of like where, maybe the market was at that
So 98.
Okay.
To early 2000.
Okay.
So University City was less than $100,000 for properties.
Wow.
120 max. Now you know where it went.
Right.
So we bought some really great deals back then. And then I started a website, urbanphilly.com, which was a website basically, again, new tech, email back then. I'm taking it back. Email was a disruptive technology. Most people didn't have email. It was like college students had email addresses, and we found a way to actually start highlighting events going on in the city for Black professionals. We were at Penn, and most people were in the bubble. I was one of the few people from Philly, so they would always ask me what's going on. So actually, and funny, when I was actually looking at real estate in Old City, and there was a brother who owned this property. A friend of mine told me that he recently bought it, how much it cost, and I was checking it out. He had a glass window, and he saw me and my fraternity brother were peeking in the building, and he saw us, so we couldn't like move. We just kind of act like we was, just taking a look at it. He came to the door and said, hey, can I help you? And I said, a friend of ours said that he's familiar with you. He recently bought this property. We were just taking a look at it. He said, come on in, take a look at it. So we're going through the property, and downstairs he had all these servers, like all these lights going off in the basement. And I said, what kind of business you got going on down here? He's like, oh, it's a little business I got going on, nothing big. So he brushed it off. And then I came back again, was like, nah, really, what you got going on? And he sat down for an hour talking about bingo.com. This is back in 1999, bingo.com, how he actually started a website. People were playing bingo for free, and it would sell eyeballs. I never thought about you can offer something for free and actually, sell advertising. That was for me, it was like a aha moment. And he literally, about 2 months later, we left there excited because he was talking about the revenue he was generating. And 2 months later, he was in a business journal. He sold it for $13 million to a women.com back then. So it was like this validation, and I was like, I got to start something that I could actually help people that they would like, and we could actually monetize it through like advertising. So we started a website, urbanphilly.com. Started with an email list, then a website, and 30,000 subscribers, 3,000 event marketers that would use the website. It was user generated. Folks uploaded their event. We brought the audience, and sponsors would pay us, and promoters would pay us, all kinds. This is before Facebook and MySpace and all the social media. So we built this email list of 30,000 subscribers, and then in 2000, Mike Morrow was a salesperson for us. You guys know some of these guys.
Shout out to Mike Morrow.
I'm sure everyone here. And we just, in Delaware Valley First Fridays, we partnered with them. They kind of mentored me, and this is amazing time. But then we pivoted because other companies started coming in where you couldn't compete with like a Facebook and the capital they had and the eyeballs they had, where companies can now and promoters can promote their events on there. So we pivoted to UPPN, the Urban Philly Professional Network, doing events and doing more. We became a convener of professionals versus party promoters. So we were seen differently. Although we were the same audience, we were doing different kinds of events. And what happened was I was now seen as a convener. And there's more, you know, there's influence from a business perspective when you're a convener versus a promoter, which is interesting. So I started being asked to serve on boards. I was serving on the Philadelphia Film Society board and didn't even know what a board, you know, really was supposed to do. And then the African American Chamber of Commerce, and then I actually became the chairman of the board for the African American Chamber of Commerce in 2010. So I'm sitting early 30s, and
so now before we get to that point, you know, you touched upon urban Philly, Philly Network, which did that then turn into UPPN? Okay.
Well, I created a new email list. So we kind of started promoting different kinds of events. Said, hey, if you're interested, join this email. So then we were doing after work events, after work mixers. We bring in book, you know, authors. Damon John came, Russell Simmons, and different folks that would come in and speak on their books. And this is the relationships that I had that would bring us great events.
And it sounds like, you know, can you just talking about even now, like, you know, 2020, this idea of being able to pivot or being able to like shift the direction, and so it sounds like that's what you did with Urban Philly. Word. And then during that period, because you mentioned it was like bingo.com, that was a .com era. Like, what was it like? Because that was before our time. So like, what was it like going through that period? You know.
So what happened was you had this boom. Everyone's throwing capital at these .coms and everything, and then it was this bust. Like everything went away, and all these businesses that were trying to grow super fast, they kind of fell by the wayside. And what you realize, and what I've learned, and it happened again in 2007, you know, you got to realize that these times where the market retracts, that's the time to build. That's the time to be resilient. That's the time, because it's going to come back. It happens in cycles all the time. Happened in 2007 with real estate. You know, everybody, their mother was a real estate agent in 2007. I promise you. You know, we had these events, real estate professionals night out. We had 200 plus real estate professionals that would come out. Mortgage and everything was moving. 2007, the economy hit, and everyone, boom, you know. And then those who were resilient, stuck through it, were able to come out on the other side, you know, as well. So you see this happen about every 10 years or so. You see the market retract. But that's when you got to stay persistent with what you're doing, especially if you know it's something that's going to eventually come back as well. So that's one thing. You saw companies like Amazon.com and different ones that then emerged, you know, later on as some of the biggest entities. But so you see that. So you see the retraction. You just got to stay. And even ideas I had was always like 5-10 years ahead of time. And the funny thing is, I had realized I had to slow down a little bit or be more persistent with things, because after 5 or so years, I'm like, I see it, but it's just not coming. Then I might pivot somewhere else. And then 5 years later, it was like, that was a genius idea. You know, it was just a little bit ahead of its time.
So now with the Urban Philly Network, you talk about how you built this email list of 30,000 people. What was that process like for you? You know, of like putting that together, or even having the insight, or like, you know, what you were doing at that time to you know, attract people to this serve. I
didn't have a language back then, but it was a lead magnet. You had a lead magnet. A lead magnet was events. You know, and a lead, you know, you had First Fridays. Friends of mine, they would have 1,000 professionals a month at an event without email. So the way they got the word out, they sent out postcards to 10,000 people, and then word of mouth. You know, you can't even fathom that now. Like, they would spend thousands of dollars. We helped them transfer it over to email. So now, in order to find out where First Fridays was, you had to get our email. So we had subscribers, you know. So we had different ways of just being a lead, you know, creating lead magnets. We had Coors and different big liquor brands. We had big parties on the Moochaloot, and you know, companies would pay us 20 grand to put together a free event with free open bar, boom, boom, boom. And then we just sent out an email. Before you know it, we had 1,500 RSVPs. We had to shut it down. 1,000 people show up. Then it's a word of mouth. So that was so basically just today, same thing, a lead magnet. What is it that people want? Trigger. Set up a opt-in page. Give value for free. Capture the information, and then you upgrade them to new opportunities down the line. So our lead magnet was events.
Okay.
Nice. And I just want to pivot a little bit to those of us who join us today. Thank you so much for being here with us. Again, we just don't want you to listen. We actually want you to be active participant in this conversation. So if you have questions for Sulaiman, please go ahead and add your questions in the comment section so that we could also respond to that. So Sulaiman,
you got a question right here?
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay.
So I think one important aspect that we're missing is honing this entrepreneurial spirit. So in your journey, what was the pivotal point in your experience that let you solidify this kind of resilient nature or continue to this path?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So I've always had this kind of entrepreneurial stuff. Growing up, I was the paper boy. Find the paper boy. He's the entrepreneur. I would volunteer. Well, actually, I would go to the golf course and be a caddy. Like 20 kids out there waiting to get picked to be a caddy. Now I was out in the Northeast, where it's predominantly white. We lived in like a apartment complex. My mother didn't want me growing up in Germantown area where I was born in North Philly, so she got a job with the city, was able to get me into a better school district. So I was also very conscious. I always share the story. I was conscious of race back then too, because of feeling excluded, things of that sort, in the far Northeast where it's predominantly white. So that also plays into some of the work I do now and some of the passion I have. So kind of mirroring my passion with my entrepreneurial spirit. Played football as well, and being all public with sports and being recruited to a few Ivy League schools. Didn't even know what Penn was. So had this entrepreneurial spirit, and but I was also I did a program called Inroads, which was an internship, which I didn't realize how powerful that was. Being in college, a lot of young people don't get meaningful internships early on. My internship was Johnson & Johnson, and after 3 years and 3 summers of being there, I realized that I didn't want to work for someone else for the next 30, 40 years. So that was the positive thing, but I learned some really good, business etiquette, things of that sort. And one of the defining moments too was they would have us do presentations during the summertime after our work was over. In the summer, we talked to different managers and leaders about what we did over the summer. And I was that kid that was more an introvert, shy, call my, it was like cool, but it was really that you were more shy than anything. Shy, but more of an introvert. And I was the one that would rather take a 0 before I got in front of the class and spoke in front of my class. So I was like preparing word for word to do this presentation. I realized that's a bad idea to try to memorize word for word your presentation. So I'm in front of this audience, these managers, and I start talking, and I remember, some of my parts, and then I forget one word, and I froze up. And it was so embarrassing. I'm sitting there trying to remember what's the next word, the transition, and then I just eventually was like, can I start over? And they were like, them give me the pity clap, like, yeah, you can start. Now, I instantly became this kid, so now I'm trying to start over, and I'm using the overhead projector. I don't know if you guys know what that is, like you had the little transparent thing that project on the wall, and you gotta put it on, and you put your finger on it. I didn't realize that when you're nervous, your hand is shaking. So you get it's amplified on the video. I'm like, so then you see my fingers shaking. I was just a mess. And then later they gave me a little trick on how to hold the side so your finger don't. But so I went through that process, and I realized fear kind of was going to cripple me. And for whatever reason, I knew that public speak was important to success, and I wanted to be successful. And I made a decision that fear was not going to cripple me from learning. So I started to put myself out there. Anytime I had an opportunity to speak publicly, I would just volunteer early. My family reunion, they would say, would you speak? And I would just volunteer. Then as I got closer, I would get super nervous, you know, like, why did I do this? But I just started putting myself out there.
Yeah.
And then I was introduced to network marketing, which is, you know, some of you may know, you know, people, you know, ACNs and the different companies that many people, you be running from your friends, right? But I did that early on. I was in college.
Okay.
And I started learning these skills, like learning about personal development. Yeah. Reading books that help you to build your mindset, Think and Grow Rich, you know. So I'm reading these powerful books about personal development. I learned 2 important skills. I learned sales. I learned how to, you know, and I always say, people say I'm not good at sales. I say sales is communicating the virtue of a good product and getting people to say yes. Everyone needs to learn how to communicate. You're just saying you're a bad communicator if you say you're bad at sales. So as an entrepreneur, you gotta learn how to sell, communicating the virtue of a good product and getting people to say yes. 2, I learned leadership. Leadership is getting things done through people. So I was learning, you know, I built a small team. I was on, you ask my classmates at Penn, they'll tell you, Sue was the one running around campus with suits on, going to business meetings, and I actually ended up having about 200 team members on campus, and they running around with suits too, and we were getting, getting Penn vans and driving down to Atlanta for conventions, and I didn't make much money, but I learned a lot, the personal development. I started learning leadership, and I learned presentation skills, so now I was like, I learned how to speak in front of audiences. I didn't make much money with that business, but then my next company, when I was building Urban Philly, I didn't have to be profitable right away, because that business I started making $4,000 a month, and that's where I mentored like a Charles Roberts, who's a awesome young man here in the city doing great things, and I met so many different folks, and I built a team that and I learned, so was honing those skills even more, and I was able to build a business and not have to work a full-time job. So at 24, I was able to not have to work a job anymore, so I became a full-time entrepreneur. So still honing those skills. Later on, I built a bigger business with the company where I built a team of over 30,000 team members across the country. Made a few $1 million over 5 years, and and I realized I overcame that public speaking thing when my mentor, who didn't believe in preparing for presentations, so he felt like you should just get up there and speak from your heart type of deal. So when he told me in the morning on a Saturday, hey, I want you to get on stage and present today in front of these 15,000 people that's in the audience without much preparation. When I realized I did that without being nervous, I realized I came a long way. In fact, it's on YouTube. You can Google Sulaiman the MGM presenting and speaking to an audience of over 15,000 folks. So so you it's a journey, and you build that resilience. And over time, again, I learned that there's certain skills you can learn, and are transferable. Understanding how to be clear in your vision. It was 2 things I said: sales and leadership. And the third thing I learned was more of quantum physics and what some call spirituality around belief. Understand the power of your mind and believing and focusing on things, and the law of attraction, all the things that you hear about that many people underestimate or they're not exposed to it enough to realize it is real. Most of us don't, we don't realize. Again, you can be a mentor of mine, the same mentor I talked about, he was earning $1 million a month in that same company where I was doing less than that per year. And others like, what's the difference? And he said, Sulaiman, he said, you're smart, you're a great presenter, you understand, like you can train. He said, you're better than me at all those things, but what I do is I believe bigger than you.
So, can we come back to you for a second?
No, it's just kind of right back to. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
So
I just hope folks. I hope folks are taking notes, because Sulaiman is dropping a lot of gems right now. But I want to make sure we continue to engage our followers right now. Tyrone, please, thank you for your questions. He has a question for you, Sulaiman. With a high influx of real estate investors, and NY pushing in, where do you see Philadelphia real estate market going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I certainly, I mean, obviously COVID changes, again, things of, you know, it's this urbanization and people coming in from the suburbs, moving into the city. That's been happening for a number of years. So you see in these major cities that were deindustrialized and redlined for years, people coming back into the city. So that's been happening across the country. Now the question is, as people don't have to live around their job and you know, so determining what that means for the future of, you know, cities. And I believe that people still will start to influx in quality of life, and if, you know, once the cultural institutions open back up and having access to those things in major cities will be important. So and also I think people are fleeing New York and higher priced places for people, places like Philadelphia. So there's a lot of opportunity there. Again, and I would encourage people, when I look at real estate, and I haven't been doing real estate in a long time, I have friends who, my best friend who, again, would laugh at me when I was doing real estate when I was in college. He called me, he said I was a, what do you say? He said, yeah, he called me a slumlord. He said, well, you want to be a slumlord? I'm like, why you got to be a slumlord to own real estate? He now owns 9 million square feet of commercial real estate. He started seeing that I was doing, and same thing, I got my friend Everett into real estate. He's the one who owns Lindustry now. It's worth, you know, $300 to $500 million his company is worth now. So just being a trendsetter into different sectors, but real estate, I believe the opportunity is looking at the highest and best use of real estate right now. Thinking about Airbnb and the vacation, you know, and I don't know, again, how that is impacted. I haven't stayed up on how that's impacted, but the reality is while properties are being priced based on traditional rent, you know, if you say, oh, this is worth $1,000 a month, $1,000 a month or $1,500 a month, your goal is to how do you get that how do you create an income approach to that where it's earning $3,000 a month? And you're buying it as if it's only $1,500. And it's gonna be a window that owners are saying, hey, you can get $1,500, but in your mind, you know, oh, I can get $3,000. So as long as there's that gap there, you can rack up. But once they catch on, people were selling saying, oh no, you can get $3,000 per month on Airbnb on this. Because I know the location, I know the market value. Now they're pricing it much higher than they would have if you caught them in a time where things are transitioning. So again, there's usually a window of opportunity to be able to get property and real estate at a much higher value to pay off you can pay off the mortgages faster, you know, and have, you know, debt-free property. So I think there's an opportunity to force opportunity, but naturally I think that you're going to find that, yeah, Philadelphia being a better, you know, between DC and New York, quality of life, you know, but again, COVID's going to play a part in that too, and it can be positive or negative, but you got to be you know, kind of dig into your craft and see what's going on, see what the trends are happening, so that you can be ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I think it's so important that, you know, especially us as a community, and young people too, are becoming more aware of opportunities that are available, because there definitely is like a knowledge gap around some of these opportunities that are here. And I was talking to somebody the other day about how, you know, when we were in college, we would live on like 42nd, 43rd, and at that time, you know, they would say, you know, don't go past 45th. I think 45th.
It's 43rd when I was at Penn. Yeah.
I think by the time we got there, don't go past like 50th.
Yeah.
Right?
By the time you guys got there, right? When I was at 48th and have 48th and Larchwood around there, and I saw a white kid on a unicycle. I was like, oh yeah, it's about to it's about to be different over here.
But it's interesting because, you know, now the talk's 49, like it just keeps, you know, pushing back, and I know there are different implications to it, but knowing, because you know, like I got into real estate in the last couple of years, but knowing where I was, and I know you said you started getting into real estate while you were in college, but knowing where I was living during that time when I was on campus, and I think about like what opportunities are actually there, you know, but it was around like the awareness. So I think as a community, like increasing awareness and being able to like visualize like what is really possible. But I think because Sulaiman, he'll talk about this idea of like chasing your fears. It's like whether it was like public speaking, and then also like the idea of belief too. So I think a lot of the times things seem too good to be true, right?
Yeah.
And then they say like if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. But what I've learned is that there are some some things that aren't necessarily too good to be true. But I think what a challenge a lot of people go through is with having patience. Yeah. And so it's like and
I want you to pause right there because you got to realize where we learned our financial blueprint from. We learned it from broke people.
Right.
Like a lot of, and if you didn't grow up in a wealthy household, you probably got a financial blueprint. Money doesn't grow on trees. Well, it does grow on trees. It's paper. So like go to school, get good grades, go and live. Like we learn our financial blueprint from people who are not wealthy. So when I started, you have Rich Dad Poor Dad. Prime example of that book. I read that early on. Again. Successful people who are in the 1% have a different mindset and it starts. So when you're actually hearing things that you have cognitive dissonance, like it doesn't resonate with your upbringing or your philosophies, those are things you gotta pay closest attention to because now it's gonna interrupt the things you've learned growing up. And I had learned that early on, so I had this blueprint, like if 97% of the population are broke. So if everyone's doing it, then it's probably leading them to be broke. So let me look at what people are saying is too good to be true, dig into that so I can do what the 3%. So you gotta understand we've been trained, our mindset.
I think this is what Sulaiman just, it's just also about how we've been conditioned, right? Yeah. And I think given your circumstances, sometimes when it comes to finance, especially in the Black community, we sort of have a negative perception or fear of it.
And it's like a scarcity mindset.
It's like because we conditioned that way because in your mindset you're like, oh, if I want to invest in real estate, I most likely will get rejected. But I think sometimes when we think about it is sometimes the only person that's holding you back is yourself. So it's like Sulaiman sort of mentioned is is when do you sort of get the pivot of the mindset, right? When do you get to the point where you overcome these personal fears?
You overcome yourself.
So once you sort of overcome these sort of fears that you have, and then it open up so many doors of opportunity, right? So I just think it goes back to this conversation that we say, as Sulaiman just said, it's just yourself. You are your biggest asset. So it's a lot of the more self-work that you do, the more you dream bigger, the more you are able to open up those windows of opportunity. But I also want to shift it to Toby. Toby, you had a question.
Oh yeah. So back to what you said earlier, the 3 main skills you learned through your experience: being a great salesperson, leadership, and I think the most impactful one is spirituality. So the spirituality aspect, we only hear the successful entrepreneurship stories. At your point in time in your experience, where did you have the most challenge and you thought about giving up but you didn't? So I think the difference between a successful entrepreneur and a failed entrepreneur is that breaking point.
Yeah.
If you keep going or if you fall back.
Yeah. It's a lot of things that you're talking about. Key thing is personal development, like reading the right books, listening to audio tapes, and not just how-to stuff, because how-to is only 10-20% of your success. The 80% is your mindset, your belief system, because you can do anything and be a failure. You can do anything. You could be in a great opportunity, and I saw that. I was in network marketing. Most people don't succeed in those industries, and I realized it's more the mindset. You talked about it. They said inner me is my enemy. It's my mindset that can sabotage your success. So, and you got to also understand the process that, to your point, that breaking point. Many times you got to bridge. You got to have faith. You got to have belief, especially when you're doing something new. You got to see it. You talked about vision. Most people have sight but no vision. You got to see things in your mind first, where it's going. You got to also accept it in your mind where you're going. Because if you feel like an imposter when it comes to success in your future, like if you can't see yourself having success, or you feel like if you have all these negative associations to being successful and you can't feel good about being there in your mind, you'll sabotage it in the process. So first you got to go there in your mind that, you know, and feel good about it. Like, man, this is where I'm going to be, and I feel good about it. And if you don't feel good, you got to clear that cognitive dissonance and clear out those negative thoughts that may sabotage you when you get there. So that's why it's important you hear things like visualizing your success. Like, can't take that stuff lightly, because some of us have past trauma and things that will keep us from even succeeding. You get real close to being successful, and then you'll find a way to throw a monkey wrench in it because you don't even want to be successful.
Right.
Subconsciously.
It's Sulaiman, it's just so crazy to me that these are skills and conversation that we are not being taught in schools. You know, we often learn this through process, through failures.
Yeah.
So hopefully for those people who join us and for people who tune it in, the takeaway will be this idea, like, you know, it's all about believing in yourself. It's all about failure. It's all about the process. But most importantly, it's about the vision. It's about where do you see whatever company and business you work, where do you see that company in 10 years? Because there will be setback. There will be a moment where people doubt you, especially in this world where you being a black person, there's so much against you. So if you don't have that sense of strong belief in yourself, there's no way you're going to make it. And I just think those are like stepping stones.
Yeah.
We have a question here from Classic Gent. What is the best way to showcase a new business to various communities with the goal of setting clients?
Best way to do what?
Say, what's the best way to showcase a new business to various communities with the goal of getting clients?
Yeah, good question. Key thing is building trust. So that's why you see a lot of these online marketers, what they do is they offer a lot of free content. They're educating people, they're building trust, they're building a relationship, they're triggering reciprocity. You give people value, they return it with appreciation. So build an email list, build a, do what you guys are doing, build an audience, build an audience of trust. Ask them questions about your product, and get some feedback and buy-in along the way, and then also we talked about the lead magnets. Offer good content, and in return ask for something as simple as an email address to stay in contact with them and continue to build that audience. Once you build an audience, and then not only can you offer a product that's just one, but you build a brand that people trust you. You can have 2, 3, 4 products down the line as well. So I always encourage people to build an audience, build trust, be in a position where you're potentially consultative in that, because now you build a level of authority too, where people, they trust you, but also they respect you. And now when you recommend things, they receive it and they'll move on it. So you see these influencers, you see folks who are making money, they're just using simple, it's a great book called Influence by Robert Cialdini. Most of the successful entrepreneurs online, things of that sort, network, they read that book. They understand the triggers of influence, reciprocity, commitment and consistency, likability, authority, social proof, scarcity. Read that book 12, 15, and apply it in the things. When you understand those things, human psychology and what triggers people to buy, to agree, to trust, all these different things. Books like Contagious. So when I created this formula that I used to train on in network marketing, and still when I talk to entrepreneurs, I talk about, it's basically 3 areas. It's like a formula where it's belief, it's gonna be clarity, plus belief. So you have clarity, what you want. Your mind's like a GPS system. You gotta know where you're going. If you aim for nothing, you hit nothing all the time. So you think about a GPS, you gotta put the destination into the address. You may not know how to get there yet. You don't even know, you need to know how to get there. Your mind, your GPS system will get you there. You just gotta know where you're going. You plug it into the system now, and then clarity. Clarity is starting to build the vision, and it doesn't right away. What you want, your belief, is something you see, have the audacity of believing it, and then the clarity starts to happen as you go along. And you gotta have faith to also bridge the gap between what you know and what you don't know, but it'll ultimately start. You have faith in your ways, right? you put the destination and you know it's going to take you, and so you have faith, but you don't have faith in sometimes. So the belief and clarity. Second part is skills and influence. Skills is basically whatever you're doing, there's a certain set of skills you need, and that's, again, a smaller piece to it. But do your research to know and speak the language, know the lingo, know the technical piece around what you're doing. If you're doing a podcast, know the little details of that, but then also understand influence, which is how you're gonna move an audience. And then lastly is work ethic and focus. So being consistent with it and what you focus on, because you can be working hard, but focus on the wrong thing. You gotta focus on the leveraged activities that's gonna give you the highest return on your effort. So it's work ethic plus focus is what's gonna get you to the result. That formula right there, anything you do, any kind of belief plus clarity times skills plus influence times work ethic plus focus will give you success in anything you do.
That's the ingredient right there.
Sounds like some new math to me.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for that simplifying this way of like on the path to be successful. And again, we are so honored, honestly, to have you on our show today, Sulaiman. And Instagram does this thing where it's 1 hour, so we will continue because we do have more questions for Sulaiman. And if you do have questions for him as well, go ahead and drop it in the comment. We'll make sure your questions are heard.
What's the time stamp?
So right now we are 4:54. Okay. So we might get cut off in about 6 minutes. But we do get cut off, just hang in there with us. We'll be right back again, so we could have about an hour, hopefully less than that, to continue with these conversations. So again, do not just sit there and listen, ask questions, because asking the right question is really what's going to make this conversation more productive and insightful.
And I want to expound on that formula too. When you look at those 6 things, you want to focus on each of those. One is clarity. So strategic planning around your business, understanding what you want to, clarity of how you're going to get there. So building your plan, and ultimately it starts coming to reality and visualizing that. 2 is belief. There's books on belief, just how to believe, the magic of believing. Like there's actually books that talk about the power of belief, and then just gives you that, understanding how powerful belief is. Work ethic. Focus, there's books on execution. There's books on how to work and how to work smart, how to focus on things. The 4 disciplines of execution. So it's productivity type hacks and things of that sort around that. And then also, again, whatever you're trying to do, the skills. And then there's tons of books on influence. Influence is sales, influence is leadership. The 2 things I told you, they fall under influence. And that's one of the most powerful things you can learn as well, is how to influence an audience for good and not manipulating folks, but building trust and respect. That's why you build long term, by influence with a consciousness of wanting to help people more than you want to help yourself.
Go ahead.
So let me talk about these 6 elements that go into this equation, and you're talking a lot about self-development, personal development. And you mentioned some sources too. Are there? Can you name a couple of? And I know you've already named a couple too, but can you name a couple of the sources that you've used? You've read, whether videos you've watched, or what you've listened to, or what has helped you internalize some of these concepts.
Yeah. So as it's talking about belief, magic of believing, the science of getting rich, Think and Grow Rich. These are books that just really talk about your mindset. So those are things you want to listen to. A good one is Bob Proctor. Bob Proctor speaks a lot around belief and understanding. He was in the Law of Attraction, The Secret. He was in that, but older guy, but he really gigs into the science of why belief matters. Dr. Joe Dispenza, meditation and things of that sort. When you look at us, let's talk about influence. Robert Cialdini, Influence, which is a great book, to start with, and there's so many others that have come after that. We think about work ethic, deep work. That's a new skill, just focus. Nowadays technology is, we're always distracted. We don't know how to turn things off and get a deep work session in for 90 minutes. So there's a book on that, just how to start chunking away at things, and because we're always thinging and things. So today, one of your biggest challenges, like everything's available to us, but we're so distracted. We're all over the place. We're octopus on roller skates, you know, trying to like boom, boom, boom. But so if you learn a skill of focusing to get things done, then you're gonna move stronger. So those are just some
and
topics.
I think what would be helpful also for us to start codifying some of these resources and books to have it posted on our page so that folks could use as a reference. But what's so interesting to me, Sulaiman, what you're saying is, sometimes when we think about like attaining skills, we think about the cost of it. I need to go to school to get these skills. I need to do X, Y, and Z. It's going to cost me. And that sort of could like serve as a hurdle for some people, right? But it's also about different way. People need to think about different way of attaining skills. So right now, what I'm hearing you saying is the way you, like, if you need to get skills on like public speaking, there are different ways. There's a way to actually like get those skills without it costing you any money, right?
Yeah. So when I talk about education, it's not a university. There's so many different tools to learn things today. There's LinkedIn Learning. There's Audible. I love Audible. There's another one that's actually cheaper, Scribe, where you can basically get as many books as you want for like $9.99 a month. Download. I like audiobooks. So when I'm working out, I'm listening to audiobooks. So download, personal development, create your own university, your own track. Like spend time each day on personal development. You got to carve out an hour, 2 hours working on yourself. Say Abraham Lincoln said, if I had 6 hours to cut down a tree, I would spend 4 hours sharpening my axe. So you got to sharpen your axe. Otherwise, you can be doing something, and 2 years later, 3 years later, you haven't become a better person either. But if you sharpen your axe and become better, you can be very great at that or great at something else as you pivot as well. So make sure you work on yourself harder than any business you work on.
Talk a lot about books, which is important. What's your thought on podcasts in terms of attaining knowledge? Yeah,
it's great. I mean, again, information has been democratized. It's like it's open to everyone. Key thing is now the issue is it's so much. So you got to be disciplined about what you want to learn. Spend the time learning it. Don't get distracted from it because there's so much information. So identify people that, as far as, you got the Russell Brunsons of the world who can teach you kind of the funnel systems in business. You have, Brandon Bouchard, different, so you guys, so many great people. Danielle Leslie is a friend who, teaches people how to turn their passion, their content into a product type of deal. So being Nehemiah Davis is doing some great stuff online about, specific skill sets around event spaces and things of that sort. So being able to gain knowledge from others, you can leapfrog. You don't have to figure these things out yourself. You can spend 5 years trying to figure things out yourself, or you can get someone who already spent 5 years figuring it out and get that information as well.
I want to make sure it's 5:01. We might get cut off soon, but we do, please hang in with us. We are going to go ahead and reset the live again so we can get more time. So just wanted to let everybody know that we definitely have more questions, because I think another thing that when we come back for the second aspect of this show, we will ask Sulaiman more questions around creating this space to make sure our black and brown folk have a seat at the table. Because that's part of one of the major work that he does as well. But for now, again, we might get cut off, but I just want to make sure, and please hang in with us. If we get cut off, hang in there. We'll be right back on the live. But for now, go ahead, Ken.